The heat was a physical weight, a heavy blanket of dust and expectation that pressed down on the shoulders of the thousands gathered on the plains of Moab. For Joshua, the weight was heavier still. He stood at the edge of the scrubland, his sandals sinking into the parched earth, watching the Jordan River. It wasn't the peaceful silver thread described in the stories of his youth. It was the season of harvest, and the Jordan was angry. Fed by the melting snows of Hermon, it had burst its banks, a churning torrent of muddy brown water carrying debris and uprooted tamarisks. To any sensible man, it was impassable. Behind him, he could hear the restless murmur of a nation. He heard the sharp cry of a hungry child, the lowing of weary oxen, and the hushed, anxious whispers of elders who remembered the Red Sea but feared this new, rushing barrier. They were so close. The green hills of Canaan mocked them from the other side, shimmering through the haze. Joshua turned to the priests. They were men he had known for years, their faces lined by the desert sun and decades of wandering. They carried the Ark of the Covenant on long poles of acacia wood. He saw the way their knuckles went white as they gripped the wood, the way they looked at the lethal current and then back at him. "Move forward," Joshua said. His voice was steady, though his pulse hammered against his ribs. The procession began. It was a slow, rhythmic march, the clinking of metal, the soft thud of feet on damp soil. As the lead priests reached the muddy lip of the river, the air seemed to grow still. The crowd went silent. Even the wind died down, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. Eliab, the priest on the front left, felt the cold spray hit his face. He looked down at his feet. One more step and the current would sweep him away. The ark was heavy and the mud was slick. He looked at his partner, shared a single terrifying glance of human doubt, and then, remembering the pillar of fire and the manna of their childhood, he shifted his weight. He stepped into the water. The moment his toe broke the surface, the world buckled. There was no thunder, no great roar, just a sudden, impossible silence. To the north, miles away at the city of Adam, the rushing water piled up as if hitting a glass wall, rising in a shimmering, translucent heat. To the south, the water already in the channel simply drained away toward the salt sea. Eliab gasped. Where there had been a lethal flood, there was now only glistening ribbed sand and smooth river stones. The priests marched to the very center of the riverbed and stopped. They stood there, human pillars of faith, holding the golden ark while a nation began to move. Joshua watched the faces of his people as they descended into the river's throat. He saw mothers clutching their children's hands so tightly their fingers were bruised. He saw old men stooping to pick up a smooth stone, their eyes wet with tears, realizing they were finally walking on the floor of the promise. The smell was overwhelming, the scent of wet earth, ancient silt, and the sudden sharp freshness of a path opened where none existed. For hours, the rhythmic trudge of thousands of feet echoed off the dry riverbanks. Joshua stood near the priests, feeling the strange, cool draft coming from the wall of water held back by an invisible hand. He looked at the priests. Their shoulders ached, their legs trembled from the hours of standing still, but they did not waver. When the last of the stragglers, a young shepherd boy dragging a stubborn goat, finally scrambled up the western bank onto the soil of Canaan, Joshua signaled to the priests. They climbed the bank, their sandals caked in the mud of the deep. As the soles of their feet touched the grassy slope of the promised land, the silence broke. A roar like 1,000 lions filled the air as the mountain of water collapsed, reclaiming its path with a violent, foaming rush. Joshua looked back at the surging river, then at his people. They were tired, dusty, and frightened of the wars to come, but they were home. He reached down, picked up a handful of Canaan's soil, and let it crumble through his fingers. It was no longer a story told by his ancestors. It was under his fingernails,